it's Lee from colouringqueen.net, and today I am colouring my May Mandala. So every month I have been creating a mandala and releasing it on my coffee store, and usually I have a couple of versions. In the beginning I was doing a colour by number, a black line one, and I think a greyscale one, but now the last couple of months I've been doing a black line one, which is like the normal line art, and a grey line one if you want like the painterly effect, and a greyscale one. They also come with colour palettes if you're like me and you can't work out what colour you want. So today I'm colouring the greyscale one. I printed it up on marker paper so that I could use multiple colours without the paper pilling, and I'll put a link to that below, as well as a link to where you can download the mandala for free. And I actually printed two on an A4 size piece of paper because I tend to make mistakes or change my mind about colours, and so they're smaller than the normal A4 size. So I decided that I was going to use my Copic markers today because I haven't used them for so long. And when I took them out, I can't believe it, but many have dried out. So although I was inspired by one of the colour palettes I included with the May Mandala, I actually had to change some colours because my Copics were dry and I didn't have any alcohol to, pour in, take the nib out, pour in a little bit of alcohol and try and revitalise them. So I've had to change around the little colours a little bit. Now you may hear Millie in the background. She is very keen to get up here and get covered in marker today. I don't know, so you might hear her little bell tinkling. And I have sped up the video to 1.5, so I'm recording in 1.5 time, just because mandalas are really repetitive and you're colouring the same thing basically over and over, so it would be boring for you to having to watch the same thing. So I'm going to colour them in the markers. Then I'll probably add some of my Colleen pencils over the top of them, because I have been loving using them lately. I've sort of rediscovered them in my cupboard and I just really love using them at the moment. I'm still using my set of 60. I've got a few packets of 60 as well as the 120 that I've reviewed earlier. But I never use the 120 because if I want to replace them, I'll have to buy another whole box full of 120 again. So I'm sort of saving them for special, just like my Holbens, anything that's too hard to replace pencils on, I tend to save for special. And speaking of pencils, I heard that Derwent with the ChromaFlow are now introducing some open stock. They've released the 150 set, and some of the pencils in there they didn't have open stock pencils for, but now they have. But I think there's still like quite a number of pencils someone can let me know that they won't have open stock for, which I don't know, that's just a real shame for me, because I tend not to use the pencils if I don't think I can replace them, and I don't want to buy a whole packet of pencils just to get one or two that I might use a lot. So I hope they do end up having open stock for the whole 150, because, yeah, it's a real thing for me. I hate buying things and not being able to replace them. Like with my Prismas, I've got multiple of the pencils, and I've got, a few boxes of Prismacolors because I tend to use them quite a lot. And I've made a bit of a mistake on a couple of these petals on here. I've put the pink at the wrong end and they kind of look like rabbit's ears, so I'll have to go back and fix that up. So I'm thinking that I will do the mandala in these sort of pastel colours. It's very similar to a a little colour palette that I put in with the May Mandala, and then I'll go over it with a bit of Colleen pencils, I think, and maybe do some black for the darker areas and a few little white gel pen dots. So we'll see how it goes. Millie is desperate to help me with this, and I'm desperate to keep her away. So we'll see how that goes as well. So I hope that you have all been doing well today. We have not been doing a lot. I'm trying to tidy up the house, and so I'm trying to do sort of one thing at a time. So one drawer I might clean up, or one little area, and because when things get out of hand, which they have, I don't know, I think with the change of weather, we've become a little bit lazy, and when David gets home from work of an afternoon, we've been having little naps, and it's just been quite cold here for Queensland. I'm feeling cold, even though we were thinking about going down to Sydney. I said the other day when it was like 16 degrees here, which is cold for Queensland, I was like, no, that's it. I'm not going to New South Wales. It's too cold there. I'm not going until it's like warmer weather, because I don't want to freeze. I'm already having to find jumpers and whatnot to wear. So I think I'd be frozen solid if I went back to Sydney at this time of year. And Millie is desperate to help here. So I'm sorry if you can hear her in the background. She is... Yes, Millie. Yes, you're very keen to help at the moment with colouring. Yeah, hopefully we will get down to Sydney soon, but I don't want to freeze while we're doing it. And so I'm a little bit limited with my colour palette because, so many of the Copics have dried out. And they were all stored horizontally as you're meant to store them. But for some reason, quite a lot of them have already dried out. So that's a shame. I'll have to use them more, I guess. And I'm down to one more piece of marker paper left. So I'll have to get some more of that as well. Put in an order and go up and buy some things. But every time I've been mentioning the coffee store that I've got the things that you can download in, and I'm going to be changing those colour wheels and colour charts, by the way. And as I've become more computer literate and Adobe literate, I'm going to convert those all over and add them to the coffee store. But every time I say that you can download something from the coffee shop, it makes me laugh a bit, because I actually used to own a coffee shop. So there you go. I have had some weird careers, or not really weird, just like weird career decisions in my life. Like I've had, a long-standing career, but I've also had some weird jobs along the way. And I guess owning a coffee shop fell into one of those categories of, I think, true Generation Generation X, I think I am, that can't make up their mind what they want to do. I remember reading that years ago, saying Generation X has no idea what they want to do when they grow up. And that is truly me, I think, because my career path hasn't taken the usual path of, finish school, go to university. I tend to do everything back the front. So, back when I was like 21, I think, I bought a coffee shop in a very trendy area of Sydney, and it was a sort of party all the time. And it was back in my goth days. So it was before I went all conservative, and it was back in my, black hair, multiple piercings, black hair with purple streaks, and multiple piercing days with my trusty Doc Martens and whatnot. So it was just a long time ago, and it's really funny to look back on that area of your life when you were so different, like in appearance, but also the things that you like to do and go to and see and what you did for work. So it's just funny. Every time I say download something from my coffee shop, I think about the coffee shop that I used to have and how it was just such a different life. Like, I worked so much. I had 1 day a week off work, but it wasn't really a day off. It was a day that I had to go and buy stock and think about menus and things for the upcoming week and do all the boring bookwork and all of that sort of stuff. But it wasn't really a day off per se. It was just really a day that the shop wasn't open. And, I lived above the shop, so by myself. So I was never away from work. I lived there, so, from morning to night. So even if I wasn't working myself, I was always there. And it was just a really funny time. And I made heaps of friends that, I have kept over these years, many of which were customers that used to come in and get a regular order and things like that. It's just a, funny thing that's some part of your life that you had so long ago that you still remember with such great fond memories, but it was so much work. I remember once going to the doctor on my day off and saying, I just feel so tired all the time. I'm really exhausted. And he said, well, how much do you work? And I said, like 60 to 80 hours a week. And he's like, you're kidding. That's why you're tired. I'm like, oh, okay, really? Because it was in a sort of trendy part of Sydney. And it was well known for its sort of nightlife at that particular time. It's gone quite conservative now. But back then, you would have people coming in, say at 12 o'clock at lunchtime, and, they wouldn't leave until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was just really, really long. And people would just stay there and stay there and stay there for hours and hours on end. And I might be the only one left there, but they just would not go. And it was just exhausting. And of course, you might think that you were raking in the money, but honestly, these people used to just sit there and just have one coffee for 6 hours. So nowadays, people probably wouldn't allow that to happen because they would need the table too much. But it was a pretty fun place. We had games that we used to play, and there's a lot of in the area, so they often used to come in and play, and a lot of artists that used to come and hang their stuff on the walls and whatnot, and had a lot of models because there was a couple of model agencies around the corner. But as you would expect, they did not eat much, so I wasn't making many money off them either. But the nightlife was really where it was at, and I wish I'd sort of changed things so that I just opened at night and had the days off, because the nightlife was where the money was, because there was a lot of nightclubs and fancy restaurants and cinemas and lots of shops that stayed open late. So there was a lot of people around at night. It was kind of well known for its nightlife. And so a lot of people would come and get a snack or coffee at the end of their night. And to be honest, like when I cooked, I preferred making desserts to savoury food. I really, I can cook savoury foods and I do, but I'm really not that good at it. I really much prefer like baking and making desserts and things like that. So, I wish I'd done things differently and just worked at the nights and just did like maybe a dessert bar or something. But I'm curious if any of you like look back on your life and think, God, I made some weird decisions back then, and why did I do that? Or I should have done this instead. And, things might be a bit different if I'd done that. But it was a good time, and I don't really regret it that much. I just think that I could have done things a bit better. Just like every time you colour a page, I look at it and I always think, oh, what could I have done better next time? Like, there's so many techniques and things that I still don't know, and I haven't followed any tutorials on. I tend to just pick up the markers and hope for the best, or have a go and things like that. So I don't tend to follow people's tutorials, and I don't tend to have time to look at people's tutorials. And so I'm curious how many other people do, and how many other people are so glad that they did. Because I think, over the years that I've had this channel, that maybe I just followed one tutorial a week or learned how to do one new thing a week, then maybe I'd be further along and feel better about the things that I colour, or the colour choices, or things like that. And that's probably why I included in the planner that I created, that you can get from the coffee shop, that whole list of things that you want to learn, because they're basically things that I want to learn. And, like the people that create the snowy effects and things like that, I think I've only ever coloured one sort of snowy picture. And, I was pleased with how it turned out. But again, I'd still like to learn more, especially when you look at like amazing people like Chris Cheng, who is just so stunning. Isn't her work just fabulous? Like, I don't even know how she thinks of these things. And not only that, as well as her colouring, but her drawings are just beautiful. They're just absolutely stunning. But I'm still happy with the way this is progressing, and I'm just really pleased that I had the palette to look at, because for me, choosing colours is really, really difficult. And that's why years ago I put on my website at colouringqueen.net the colour palettes. So they're basically just pictures where I've picked out the colours that represent them. And the idea of the colour palettes and the colour palettes that come with the mandalas here is that you use them as basically the primary colours in whatever you're colouring, so that it gives you an idea of what works well together. You pick out your pencils or markers that sort of match those colours. But it's not the only colours that you can use on that page. They're just the primary colours. So if you, for example, with these colours, if you had a girl wearing a dress, you might want to have some darker skin tone colours and different colours for the hair and things like that are outside of the colour palette. But you still might want to use these sorts of colours on the dress, hair bow, accessories and things like that. So that's why these colour palettes are handy, but you don't have to use every colour in them. And you don't have to, you're not limited by every colour. You can use other colours. So they're not limiting, they're just a guide. But I find them really helpful. And if you ever do need some colour palette inspiration, you can have a look at my website. There's a tab there up at the top that says colour palettes, and there's quite a few there as well. And the other week I took a few days and I created some more of the memes that I usually upload. And people have asked me in the past to put them on Instagram, which I am now, and they've asked me to put them on my website. So over the next week or so, I'll be updating the memes or the funny little things that I usually put out, and I'll be putting them on the website as well. But people always ask me how I think of those, and basically I just write things down that I think are funny at the time, and so then every few months I just go through all the things that I've written down in a book that I thought of was pretty funny, and then I just sit down for a couple of days and do all the graphics for them and upload them. And nearly at the end of this picture, I ended up outlining it with some black Stedler marker just on those black bits there, and I also added some white dots with my Arteza gel pens. So that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.